Welcome, everyone. And thanks to those of you who are chiming in the chat. We are going to do our best tonight to cover a lot of material, including any questions that show up in the chat. Um, I know we may have a few more folks joining us, but I think we can get started. It looks like the bulk of our participants are here. My name is Chelsea Kordiak. I am a longtime Silver Laker and a member of the Friends of Silver Lake Board of Directors. And we're really glad that you all could join us tonight. I know what brings us together is something that's really hard. And I just want to thank all of you for being here and for caring as much about Silver Lake as the rest of us on this call do. I do want to point out that this call is being recorded. We're recording the beginning part of the agenda. We won't be recording the Q&A. That's kind of been our policy moving forward, and we're going to keep it that way for now. But again, feel free to utilize the chat, and there will be time for questions and answers. And we're going to be saving the chat too. So anything that you want to make sure gets out, if you're not comfortable chiming in out loud, feel free to do so in the chat. At this time, I'm going to pass it over to our chaplain of the board, Reverend David Peters.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you all. Thanks so much for coming out. I'm going to invite us as we begin to ground us in prayer, so let us pray. Gracious God, we gather this day with grateful hearts for the gift that we have experienced at Silver Lake, a place where your Spirit has touched so many lives, including our own, with joy and friendship and faith. Bless our conversations, our dreaming, the challenges that we set before all of us as we look toward a bright future. Fill us now with energy, creativity, and hope, O God, that we may work together to help Silver Lake to continue to be a sanctuary of love, growth, and transformation for generations to come. Amen.
Thanks so much, David. I'm going to ask that you mute because there's some echo. Thanks. We're so lucky that David prays for us very often on the Friends of Silver Lake board because he often says exactly what I need to hear anyway. We are going to kick off tonight's discussion with hearing some Silver Lake whys from those of us who have been gathered since November, pushing this work forward. You've seen some of the videos that we've posted on social media that will be added to our website. And we wanted to give you a chance to hear some short Silver Lake whys from some of our board members tonight. So I'm going to toss it over to Brian Lapis, one of our co-chairs first.
Thanks, Chels. And good to have all of you here with us today. I want to talk a little bit about the transformational power of outdoor ministry. Personally, I have been transformed as a leader by deaning conference at Silver Lake. I started as a dean in 1988 with Bernie Hinckley. And we were kind of reckless, wise guys. We spent the week playing soccer, lighting campfires, organizing an all-conference worship, goofing off, and oh yeah, we had 50 campers to take care of. And now, as an adult, I guess you could say, we work much harder with Cameron Hull, Caitlin Mundy, also with Bernie, our counseling staff, to create a safe Christian community building experience that is centered on the camper from 2 p.m. Sunday to 10 a.m. on Saturday. We get campers away from their screens, away from an overly competitive world, an overly judgmental world, and into a world where compassion and collaboration are more important than winning, be it playing soccer or creating music or creating a worship together. It's through these activities that we start to see the transformation. The campers unwind. They look out for each other. They feel closer to God. I don't have time to give you specific examples, but I can certainly do that offline. The Silver Lake program is an excellent complement to our local church's faith formation programs. Opportunities to live in Christian community, experiencing those thin spots between us and the holy are worth providing for generations to come. And that's what we hope to do.
Thanks so much, Brian. We really appreciate all the work that you've done with Fun in the Sun, and as one of your conferees from the year 1999, Fun in the Sun, keep it going. And I forgot to mention that part of my role tonight is to keep us moving. So you may see me throw up a reaction, even to the board members tonight, to help us keep moving, because I don't want to keep any of you up too late. And I appreciate you all joining this late in the evening. Next up, we have our other co-chair of Fossil, and Reverend Andrew Wicks.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm certainly not the only person who cares about Silver Lake for this reason, but the reason why I believe in preserving the historic mission and ministry of Silver Lake is because it's a place that endows young people with tremendous opportunities for leadership. We know that more than 150 people trace their experience at Silver Lake into a calling that's led to ministry careers and ordained ministry. I suspect that if you did a head count of all the people who ended up in key leadership roles in our local churches beyond just ordained ministry, that number would grow exponentially. Our local youth group leaders, our lay leaders, our church staff, and our dedicated volunteers that serve in so many different ways in our local churches. When young people are given opportunities to learn and grow in the nurturing environment of Silver Lake, it can lead to really incredible pathways. When I think about my own story and how I ended up as an ordained clergy person, Silver Lake played an incredible role in that, not just in giving me the place to explore my own faith and ask good questions, but also in the professional skills that it developed in me in the years that I served on staff and later as a volunteer, and in the intangible connections that are made. I know oftentimes when conference leadership talks about the challenges of Silver Lake, they boil down to dollars and cents. I got my first job working full-time in a local church because someone at Silver Lake recognized that I had the potential to do that and called me in the middle of the year in the off season to say, hey, I know of an opening. I think you might be a great candidate for this. I ended up working on and off over 14 years for that church. And it led to my call to ordained ministry. It's hard to put a dollars and cents figure on someone that recognizes a young person and says, you have a chance here to do something meaningful for the church and the world. But I wish there was a way, because I think that might help people understand the true value of what the ministry of Silver Lake means. And that's my Silver Lake why.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Glad your story has brought us here. Next, we will hear from the Reverend Dr. Davida Floyd Crabtree, one of Silver Lake's first campers.
Good evening, everybody. It's so wonderful to see your faces, those who have your faces up, and see your signatures in the chat. We go back a long way, and I go back a long way to Silver Lake. Part of what's on my heart and my mind in this particular moment in history is the condition of our planet and the care for the earth, and an awareness that learning science doesn't do it all. That indeed having a sacred place that has come to have deep meaning in your life, a place that you associate with your being a part of nature, a part of creation, along with everything else that is in the created world, changes the way one treats Earth and other people. I've been really active in my retirement. I flunked, basically. But I've been really active in recent years with Third Act, an organization of elders that cares passionately about climate and democracy. And I have found it life-giving. But part of what's been life-giving about it has been I've been able to mine all those experiences back there at Silver Lake over all the decades. Places where I have encountered the holy in the natural world. Part of our core values at Silver Lake has always been caring for creation. Your creation, my creation, God's creation, and the earth. I don't think this is the right time, if there ever would be a right time, to end outdoor ministry. It's crucially important that people have these experiences starting at a young age, but continuing into late adulthood. Now at 82, I care a lot about what happens with my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. I want them to have experiences like the transformation that Silver Lake offers. I don't know if they'll ever go to Silver Lake, but all grandchildren and great-grandchildren deserve this experience. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Thanks so much, David. I'm turning it over once again to David Peters.
Yeah, I want you to think about for a minute with me the first time you went to Silver Lake. Now, I don't know about you, but me, if you look, where am I? Back here, there's a little scrawny kid. Tall, skinny, nothing like I am now. I'm still tall, but skinny, kind of geeky. And I went to Silver Lake, and I wasn't sure what to think about it. I heard about it, and I went there, and I felt this feeling, and maybe you did too, this feeling of acceptance that you were part of something greater, part of a community. And I think that's what Silver Lake has been striving for over the years, is a place for all of God's people, that no matter what our place in life, whatever our condition is, wherever we came from, we were able to come into this space that was different than the wider world. Not that we would always stay there, but we were equipped to go back out. And I got my preacher hands. To go back out, and the sense that you were part of a community, that you worked together, that you cleaned the Freds, and you helped wash dishes, and you sang songs together, and you did weird things that you never would dream of doing back home. That was all part of us coming together and finding a new identity as one of God's children. And it also was a challenge, because for some, like me, I met people that were like people I never met before. It might have been across the racial divide or handicap, about human sexuality, different points on spectrums or mental health. And we all came together as a supportive community. Now, I need to say that we always didn't quite get it right as human of an institution that Silver Lake is. There's sometimes we didn't get it right, and we feel bad about that. And we always try to work better for that. But Silver Lake intentionally tries to be this place that you and I can come together, bring our experiences, our life history, be changed, empowered, and most importantly, sent back out so that we can make the whole world part of God's creation, God's people. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks so much, David. These were 4 stories for Silver Lake Wise. And I think that maybe one of the reasons that I'm moderating tonight is because my call was not to ministry. So I'm the one watching the clock. Thank you to those of you with the gift of presenting these stories and the words for us tonight. But we're going to shift gears a little bit and give all of you an opportunity to share some of your, thank you, Davida, some of your Silver Lake whys and some of the core values that you think we should embrace as an organization, as the Friends of Silver Lake. We're going to ask you to do that in the chat because we know we would spend a lot of time chatting together, and I hope we will, and I hope it's around a campfire. But please take a moment to think about the stories that you've heard, your Silver Lake why, and what some of the core values are that you hope to see for generations to come at 223 Low Road.
Can I jump in for a minute here, Chelsea, as a board co-chair? And that's to say that as our organization continues to grow and mature, we recognize that this is a moment where we need your input to help us identify and lift up core values for who we are as an institution. It's not because the people of our board don't represent the broad constituency and hold values deeply about Silver Lake. It's about acknowledging that there are so many people out there that have valued and treasured this place and are part of it. And we want your input in the process. We want to be transparent. We want to be involved and engaged with all of you. So tell us, what is it that you, from your experience, value about Silver Lake, and how can we lift those things up as we plan the future for its ministry?
And there are no wrong answers.
So I'll go. I'm Dana Gillette, and I was a camper, I think somewhere in the 70s and the 80s. And one thing I really appreciate about Silver Lake is we all make it happen. There aren't people who just come and get waited on and everything's provided for them. It's in being part of that community. It takes all of us, and everyone has a role that they can play to make to be a part of and to own that experience and really to be a part of Silver Lake.
Thanks, Dana. I'm going to put the question in the chat, so feel free to answer there. What are the core values that you want to make sure live on at Silver Lake? What's most important to you about this ministry? David Taylor, that sounds like leadership development.
And it may be helpful just to read the comments in the chat in case everyone's not following those, because there are, useful values that are being shared there.
Now a lot of people are sharing in the chat. Thank you. David Taylor thanks Alden Tyrrell for giving Peter Wells and David Taylor an opportunity and chance to co-dean for 40 junior high youth. Sacred community to experience God while asking questions. Connection to the spirituality of the earth. A place where you can be you in a non-judgmental environment. Meeting, learning about, appreciating, befriending people with different life experiences, identities, and abilities. Inclusivity. Another one for leadership development, open to all, a safe place to explore yourself, nature, and faith. Full acceptance for everyone. Love, 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 love. Work ethic. Discovering the holy isn't just in pews. An uplifting of one's true self. So we're going to leave the chat open So please feel free as we continue the conversation to add core values that you want to see Friends of Silver Lake or Fossil embody, and what your goals are for the next chapter. And while we do that, I'm going to pass it over to our co-chairs, Andrew and Brian, for the next portion of the conversation. And thank you so much for those of you who are sharing in the chat.
Thank you, Chelsea. Want to take a minute just to restate the mission of Friends of Silver Lake and why we started this initiative. Many of you know that the conference in November announced that they would conclude the ministry of Silver Lake without a whole lot of details about what else would happen next. The property, but also the community and people that have made up Silver Lake and made it a vibrant place for the last 70 years. We believe there's something to preserve here. We believe there's something powerful and incredible and life-changing here. And I suspect many of you on this call have had that same experience in the ministry of Silver Lake. And so Friends of Silver Lake exists to preserve the historic mission and ministry and carry it forward into the future. We are open about the fact that what exactly that looks like is not set in stone. You'll hear tonight about some of the proposals that we've put forward to the conference as these solicited proposals. You'll also hear in that our desire to hear from all of you about the future shape of what may come. And we're trusting in God that there is a pathway forward here in which this ministry and this community continues to be vital and vibrant.
I think it's also important, and I think you're going to hear this a lot, is that we are interested in hearing from you. One of the things that, as we move forward, we're going to need partnerships to help us make this whole thing work. This is not going to be easy. If you've participated in some of the conference information sessions, you know that the numbers and the usage of Silver Lake has dropped while the cost of ownership of Silver Lake has increased. So we are going to we're going to need your help in examining creative ways to make this ministry work for generations to come, which would include new and varied partnerships as we move forward.
Yeah, I think the reality is that as the conference has announced it's concluding its ministry, that the next iteration of Silver Lake must look different than what we all have experienced and loved over many, many years. Which is one reason we want to hear from you the core values that will shape the next iteration of Silver Lake's ministry. Things do need to change for it to continue to be a viable ministry into the future, but we really believe that Friends of Silver Lake can be that change. We have to acknowledge that COVID, regular changes in leadership in the last several years, the expanding conference, which has put Silver Lake at one geographical extreme of a much larger area, all create significant challenges in the conference's leadership and ownership of Silver Lake. But even amid those challenges, we see reasons for shoots of hope. After a very low summer, numbers now, even before the summer season have started, are above where they were last year by a significant percentage, and registrations continue to come in very regularly. And we continue to see hundreds and hundreds of people sign up for Friends of Silver Lake, but also participate in conference events where information is being shared. We know that there's a passion out there to continue this ministry in some form and fashion.
Anything else from the chairs before we pass it to Mary for our next portion of the conversation?
Yeah, I guess my last couple of comments would be, we appreciate your trust in us. We appreciate your patience with us. We've navigated moving goalposts ourselves here in this work. And so we know at times people have felt like they don't know everything that's going on. I share that feeling with you sometimes, quite honestly. We also just want to say thank you to so many people that want to give their time, their effort, their skill set. The fluidity of this process has meant we don't always know exactly how to engage all of you right now, but we are keeping track of everybody who said they want to help, and we want to try to find ways as this organization shifts from a startup to a growing and developing institution, we know that we will need help, and we are currently in the process of expanding the ways that people can help. So please stay tuned for more information on how you can be involved in those ways.
Thanks, Susan. Pass it to Mary for our overview of proposals.
All right. Well, if anyone was feeling their feelings listening to that and reading those testimonies, the perfect antidote, about 13 proposal detail slides. I'm kidding. I'll note, Chelsea, I can no longer see the chat. So if there's anything I need to respond to that comes in the chat, if you could let me know. I'm going to walk through timeline and then dive deep into the contents of the proposals that Fossil has submitted to the Southern New England Conference. But where we started, it was last November 6th that the announcement was made that the conference was going to cease their direct operations of Silver Lake and look to sell the property. 10 days later, we held our first Friends of Silver Lake Board of Directors meeting. We spent December, January, February, and parts of March evaluating what are the precedents in other summer camps that have gone independent of their conferences, both within the UCC and corresponding structures in other denominations. We've looked at business models, understanding the available information on Silver Lake's finances, on the state of the property, on what has been explored and considered in the past, on governance models, on evaluating fundraising capacity, thinking through all of the different avenues for the use of the property in the summer, in the shoulder seasons, in year-round retreats, and exploring, and critically for the proposals, the variety of different avenues through which the property could be transferred. We're going to walk through several of those in detail tonight. A full proposal was submitted on April 6th. You have access to the full contents of this proposal. We got some feedback back from the conference based on that first proposal and sent an amendment to that, the second proposal, in May. The details there, this is the, skipped ahead twice here. This is the key big picture. Remember, one slide worth of information about these proposals. It's here. So Fossil, the board of directors, and the business planning committee, which included Mike Kordiak, Leslie Munschauer, Reverend Robert Vodra, Kimberly Cornett, Kristen Vineyard, major credit to that group of people who put time and effort into this, put together two proposals aimed to preserve Silver Lake Ministry at its historic site at 223 Low Road, but with a financially realistic path forward. And long-term sustainability, not just a short-term goal, but what really makes a viable ministry for a long time to come. And as part of that, emphasizing and maintaining a covenantal relationship with the conference moving forward. The first proposal was a lease transition period. So to sign a long-term lease with the conference where Fossil would take on operation and ownership over the site. And transitional operational support, meaning that the conference would continue to provide a declining stipend over the first 5 years to supplement Fossil's operating income. Upon feedback from the conference that they were really only interested in a purchase-based proposal, we sent an additional amendment with a new appendix, including the pathway that we thought remained financially realistic and long-term sustainable, but with an upfront purchase of the property from the conference. We didn't know when we began what the actual answers were going to be. We spent a lot of time studying the available structures, ways that other organizations have done this, what the success and outcomes of other organizations have been, both in and outside of the UCC. But looking in particular at precedents within the UCC. We looked at different operating models. We evaluated our fundraising capacity. We went through the legal, the governance, the insurance. A significant line item for Silver Lake is the insurance, as well as the maintenance risks. There is a lot of deferred maintenance on the Silver Lake property that would need to be accounted for for planning purposes and also on a financial risk front by the organization that takes the property on. And we wanted to produce a serious, credible proposal that demonstrated that we're a trustworthy organization to continue this legacy. I'll walk through 3 specific precedents that we reviewed. The Illinois Conference of the United Church of Christ owned 2 camps, Pilgrim Park and Tower Hill. Upon the decision that those camps would be better able to operate sustainably as independent nonprofits, they transitioned ownership of those camps to nonprofit entities. One of the camps already had a nonprofit arm or registration. The other created a new registered nonprofit for this purpose. They transferred the properties to those entities. They provided time-limited financial support, providing an operational supplement for the first 5 years, and maintained an institutional relationship with the camps moving forward, which showed us about that we can have. There is precedent for a model with continuing direct support, and that a covenantal relationship following the transition is part of a successful outcome. We also looked at Camp Talahi, which is the Michigan Conference former camp. When the Michigan Conference announced that they would cease operations, a similar kind of friends group for Camp Talahi organized, arranged a lease with the Michigan Conference and began taking over operations of the property to build sustainable operations, break-even finances, and adapt to what the camp needed to continue. They then later were able to transfer that lease into a purchase where a private entity that was affiliated with their friends group purchased the property and leases it to them today. This showed us more about the leasing as a bridge to the future, and particularly provided us a window on if you are not necessarily in a position to do an immediate purchase, what might your pathways look like? The third example is Camp Mimanagish, which is the Montana-Wyoming Conference. And a similar story, the conference made the decision that they would no longer continue to operate the summer camp themselves. A new nonprofit, a Friends-like organization, the Singing Waters Ministries, was formed. They purchased the buildings from the conference. The land itself is actually owned by the Montana Forest Service, but they purchased the buildings from the conference, reopened, and have continued operations under their independent leadership. So based on all of the research that we did on precedents, based on our evaluation of our situation here in Connecticut and the goals that we had, our proposal contained a few key pieces of information. So we started in proposal 1 with the property being 223 Low Road, which is 4 parcels of land. There's 223 Low Road, which includes the house on 221 Low Road. And there were 3 separate additions to the property over the last 70 years. There was 49 Sharon Heights, the Crawford property, which is so much of the land down by the lake, and also a small expansion for the ropes courses. And we used as shorthand throughout the proposal, this includes the property, all of the buildings, all the furnishings, etc. Our assumed value range of a fair market value, meaning what would this be worth on the market in real estate, was that the property is likely worth between 5 and 6 million. That was triangulated off of a couple numbers. One is the tax appraisal value of 4.9 million. That is almost always lower than the true value of a property on the market. And also the insurance replacement costs, which is 11 million. Insurance replacement costs are not fair market value. They are if you were going to rebuild every single building and asset on the property from scratch, what would that cost? So based on the usual ratios of market value to these two data points, we've evaluated that the fair market value just on market of the property is between 5 and 6 million. But it is the norm that in mission-related scenarios, you are paying a mission discounted price, not fair market value. And so on the analysis of what typical mission discounts are, including discounts on previous parcels of land that the Southern New England Conference has sold recently, we identified that a 70% discount to the 1 point something million range would be the mission discounted assumed price of purchase. And then some of the sort of hard thinking here is we concluded that we could not reasonably commit to a path where we would raise very large amounts of capital in the millions immediately. That while large capital campaign capacities exist over time in the future, having the trust of donors at that scale requires having some demonstrated success in early years of operations and demonstrating that we can create some of the improvements to the camper experience and the programming that set us up for a long-term future together. So we proposed a long-term lease, to a 10-year lease period, where the Southern New England Conference would retain ownership. Fossil would lease and operate and take full responsibility for the programming and the property. And we proposed an option for a future purchase at mutual agreement. And we included 5-year declining operational support, where each of the first 5 years, the conference would continue to provide money towards the operating budget of the camp. This had the lowest, it had in fact almost no upfront capital burden on Fossil. I say almost because there are other types of upfront burdens that would come from beginning to lease the property, but they would be spent on other areas like programming and property versus purchase, and gave us the room to take on operations, stabilize them, and do a fair amount of rebuilding. Rebuilding leadership, rebuilding staff, rebuilding camper enrollment, building donor confidence, and getting through some important maintenance issues that need to be addressed.
Thank you.
And so this was the structure that we thought was the strongest to propose. We emphasized what we see Silver Lake's role as, both historically and for generations to come, as an outdoor ministry center, a place where faith is formed, where future leaders of churches and communities are formed, and where young people encounter environmental, racial, and other justice commitments. We also emphasized maintaining a covenantal relationship with the Southern New England Conference. We noted and confirmed in part of our research all of the summer camps that have gone independent of their conferences are still in operation today. No camps who have gone independent of their conferences have done so and then failed. So despite all of the realities that caused those conferences to separate from their camps, independent organizations of a variety of shapes and sizes have been successful in achieving those. And the most successful organizations, as a general rule, have maintained a strong covenantal relationship with the original conference. After we submitted that first proposal, the feedback from the conference was that they were really solely interested in an upfront sale of the property and proposals that contained that. So we resubmitted additional content with a purchase pathway, but really amended to the first proposal because all of the assumptions, all of the vision remained the same. There were no changes to that. There were no changes to our belief on the fundraising constraints, but we needed to provide a purchase pathway. And so the core terms in the purchase were to narrow the scope slightly. So to exclude the 49 Sharon Heights property. If you're not familiar, it is a house on an adjoining road that backs up against Silver Lake's property and has been used for a variety of purposes, but many Silver Lake attendees have never seen this house or never been on the 49 Sharon Heights part of the parcel. And it contains reasonable market value of its own, just on the public housing markets. So by excluding 49 Sharon Heights, the conference has the opportunity to separately monetize that asset. The purchase price of the remaining 3 parcels was set at $803,000. That is taking the original $75,000 that the Missionary Society of Connecticut paid for Silver Lake in 1957 and just inflation adjusting that number to $2026. So, hey, what you paid for the property almost 70 years ago, we will put in today's dollars. That's how we came up with the purchase price. The financing structure was proposed as being a seller-backed financing structure. So we would do a 20% down payment, typical of real estate loans, but then have a seller-backed financing for the remaining 80% over a 10-year period. With an interest rate, you'll note the numbers specifically from the year 1957, an interest rate of 1.957, which is obviously below market. This is a mission discounted interest rate. And over a 10-year period, that would mean that we would have a loan obligation of about $70,000. We paired that part of the proposal with also aligning on the conference's rate to reserve to rent a week of summer camp programming each year, which we set at the matching number, also $70,000, so that in any year where the conference did 1 week of their own programming, that would neutralize the loan obligation. It would cover the loan obligation. And we committed that over the 10-year period, we would always make that 1 week available. And we stated that they would commit to using that for at least the first 3 years. I want to emphasize, we've talked a couple times in this about the covenantal relationship that Fossil would like to continue with the conference. I want to also acknowledge that we are in covenant with all of you as well. And that covenant calls us to be transparent, accountable, to listen, and to steward together the vision that we are creating and the mission that we are trying to carry on. We are called through that covenant to honor the history of Silver Lake and the significance that it has had in our lives and that we hope it has in lives to come. And we believe that to achieve long-term flourishing, not just surviving 1 more year or 2 more years, but really to have a vibrant future, that we need to have sound financial planning, sound operational planning, and that we need the continued commitment of this community that has sustained Silver Lake so far, and that we hope to continue to sustain Silver Lake with in the future. I'll pause for questions. I'll stop sharing so that I can see folks' faces. This will be questions specifically about the proposals. We have a general Q&A as well towards the end of tonight's agenda.
Can I add 2 comments, Mary, to your very comprehensive
Please.
proposal? One is that when the conference told us that they were not interested in our first lease-based proposal, at that same time, they were publicly and privately saying that they planned to have a July meeting of the Missionary Society of Connecticut to determine the outcome of the property. At that point, we were something like 7 or 8 weeks out from July. And so when we crunched numbers, we had to be realistic about what can we come back with within an 8-week time frame to develop a significant offer to purchase a multi-million-dollar piece of property. Mary, I know you alluded to this, but the mission discounted offer is not a generalized, hey, we're friends with a similar mission. It's a specific reference to precedent of other property sales that the conference has made within the last few years, including property in Ashland, Massachusetts, and the recent sale of Irons Homestead. There's been significant mission-related discounts because they have named Mission Line partners as the purchasers of those properties.
There was a question in the chat about whether or not the conference is losing money on running camp and need to offload it, or they are in debt generally and need to liquidate the entire property. And we answered that we are unsure of who the other buyers are. We've had some guesses, but nothing official.
As general financial context for what the conference has shared publicly, the conference has an operational line item budget each year for Silver Lake support that has been recently about $120,000 a year. And then additionally covers any amount that Silver Lake is over budget, any gap in revenue and versus costs. Which has been anywhere between $100,000 and $300,000 per year, just in terms of dollars that they have shared publicly. I will also add the conference has a large endowment, the largest of any in the United Church of Christ. While we don't know tons of details about their current finances, I suspect it is really about the annual commitment and the way that that is viewed and framed. And prioritized.
We also, in the process of trying to come up with a fair market value, requested from the conference a series of documents that would help us do our due diligence in the purchase price of the property. The conference told us that they were unwilling to share annual budgets, lists of deferred maintenance, ongoing issues related to the property, and that's made it difficult to put together a well-detailed proposal that accurately assesses exactly what's there. I don't necessarily understand the reasoning why they don't want to share those things. They've said publicly that they want a mission-aligned partner. They haven't defined that, exactly what that means yet, although that question was asked last week on the conference Zoom, and they have committed that they will identify that. They also committed early on in this process that they want to find ideally an internal candidate. We believe Friends of Silver Lake is that internal candidate that can continue to provide meaningful ministry. Yeah, so in this phase, we have worked hard to put a proposal out there. Baked into that proposal are some assumptions, some of which are about the property and its condition and its use, some of which are about its potential future uses. When we put out a call to join Friends of Silver Lake, something like 100 of you said that you are interested in helping to develop the future programming. We're at the point now that we have proposals in that we want to be able to say, let's start to put together some specifics around what this looks like. And so we ask you all to stay tuned for some inclusive, community engaging opportunities to come together and share your ideas about specific programming. But our financial models, which are available in those proposals, also lay out the hiring of staff to continue to manage both property and program.
And we're really lucky that a lot of the property has been managed by volunteers historically who continue to be engaged with Fossil. So there's a lot of institutional knowledge, and we are grateful that those folks are willing to share that with us as well. And we acknowledge that strictly managing property with volunteers is probably not sustainable moving forward.
We also know that this meeting comes on the heels of the conference's Zoom last week. We put in proposals and we're in dialogue with them in the belief that we were engaged in a good faith process. We continue to believe that a covenantal relationship with conference leadership is a critical element of future success. I personally was perturbed by the conference's statement that they don't plan to necessarily bring forth all the proposals for people to assess or even share who is bidding. We believe you all deserve the opportunity to see the work we're doing and what we have the capacity to propose today. I am similarly concerned about the timeline. When the conference says they want to extend a timeline, when they want to change meetings and change votes, continuity matters. The connections that we have with user groups, both internal to the United Church of Christ and partners like Sigma Camp that provide a significant part of Silver Lake's revenue base, those things matter and continuity is important there. I don't think there's anybody on the Friends of Silver Lake board, and I suspect most of you too, that want to see this become a drawn-out multi-year process where the site festers. It's important that there's a future that is considered in a timely manner and defines that the future can be firm and successful.
The physical property risks are material, an important part of planning, long-term financial planning, both operating expenses and capital expenses. Some of the concerns about deferred maintenance include the wastewater systems at camp, which are decades past their expiration date, as well as a number of roofs and windows that are approaching their end of life, and general unknown state of repair of a number of the different areas of the buildings and the facilities over the last several years. So any organization considering taking on the property needs to have the right operating plan for the state of the property today and capital plan for some of the more material items.
Thanks, Mary. There's another question in the chat around from Jordan about what are the camps that went independent doing differently that makes them successful. Something that we heard that was really encouraging with the camps that had gone independent from the UCC were all still open and operating. Some of the stories that we heard were around not only covenantal partnership, like was mentioned in the chat, but diversifying the business models. So allowing for adult RV camping in the off season, doing more family-based programs, and
partnering with schools, partnering with local forestry organizations, and nature-focused organizations. I see a follow-up question to this about what covenantal partnership looks like. As in our questioning, lots of different things. I think one of the primary things to strive for is to continue coordination with the original community and continue to work with the conference to coordinate and to ultimately you're communicating in many ways to a very overlapping audience, providing shared guidance to churches that you have both worked through together. And generally, the folks at OMA, for example, Outdoor Ministry Association, is that? Yeah. Guided us that one of the strongest correlations in whether a camp merely survived or really got to that point of thriving operations was their continued relationship with their original conference community.
I can speak to that just to say that, as an independent organization that is separate from the conference, we believe that it's worth partnering strongly, but our core work of continuing the mission and ministry of Silver Lake is deeply rooted in the people that have used it. And so we want a final deal with the conference, the current owners, to come out in a way that allows us to continue to have an ongoing voice and a presence in every level of leadership for the future of Silver Lake.
I will add, ultimately, the decision makers here are neither Fossil nor the conference, but the members of the Missionary Society of Connecticut, which is the historic Connecticut churches in the conference, hold the power to decide on the sale of any property. any assets greater than $1 million, which includes is only actually Silver Lake. That the membership of the Missionary Society of Connecticut is the decision maker.
Mary, I think that leads into another question that's in the chat. How does the SNAUCC intention to combine Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island into one conference affect Fossil's proposal to purchase Silver Lake? Does the merger timeline change who has authority to approve a sale, how quickly a decision can be made, or whether Connecticut delegates must vote before the merger is finalized?
What the Southern New England Conference has shared is that they would not file any decisions about the Connecticut merging into the Southern New England Conference until a decision on Silver Lake was reached.
I think it's important to note in that the process that they laid out was that a business planning team from the conference, a property team from the conference would assess proposals, eventually bring one to the board for their approval, which would then send it to the membership to vote on. There is no timeline commitment for that. And as James Kinney pointed out the other day, they have not really released the specifics of how they're even assessing the proposals. So the text of what will be voted on at annual meeting, September 23 through 25, has not been released yet. At this point, one of the most helpful things you all can do is be there and be there in person. We don't know exactly what will be voted on at this moment, but having a physical representation and presence to be able to advocate for the outcomes that are best for Silver Lake and for this community will require your presence and involvement for those votes. You can register for annual meeting through the conference's website, and you can speak to your local church pastor or council leaders to figure out how you can be a voting delegate. If you're not able to be a voting delegate, you can speak to them to find out who will be voting delegates representing your local church.
There's another question in the chat about the property team. And I think what I would like to do, since we've already been together for an hour, one is say thank you, take a stretch break if you need one. I want to invite you to keep asking questions in the chat and just mention that we have a few more items to cover before we jump into our official question and answer period. And one of those things is the vision of the future. So thank you, Andrew, for getting us started on thinking about how we can be a part of the solution and potentially show up for annual meeting. I also want to invite all of you to consider being more involved with Friends of Silver Lake. So if our proposal is accepted, when our proposal is accepted, we're manifesting over here. We will need to expand what we're doing as volunteers, as well as consider beginning stages of hiring. So I want to bring up the fact that we will be forming a nominating committee. So if you have an interest, please make sure to make it known to one of the board members or email info@friendsofsilverlake.com. We are also in the beginning stages, we are looking to hire a project manager who would work on an hourly basis to help us scale up some of our projects. So if you know of someone who has a gift for organization and about 10 hours a week to spare, please feel free to, again, email info@friendsofsilverlake.com. In terms of what happens next, I would like to take a minute to remind you all that if you registered for this call tonight, you've been on the Friends website. Good work. I want to make sure that you visit our the portion of our page where it says become a member, Wendy, if you could drop that in the chat for us so we can make sure that everyone has that information. That's the best way to stay up to date on our news. We also want you to make sure that you're sharing the news about Friends of Silver Lake, whether that is in church on Sundays, if it's at the dinner table, if it's at work. We know that the Silver Lake Network is across the world, not just in our small state of Connecticut. We've got friends across the globe for sure. And we need people to be as engaged as possible. We also have an exciting opportunity to be together in person. So I know that many of us will be at Silver Lake very soon. Some of us really, really soon and haven't thought about packing for our first time deaning with a baby. So that's me. But we also have an exciting opportunity to get together on July 2nd at the Connecticut Sun game in Hartford. So we've gotten a block of reduced rate tickets. So we're having a fundraiser. We hope you'll join us and bring a friend. And more information will be available on our website shortly about that. We also have opportunities to donate. So we are in the early stages of forming our 501c3. Thank you so much to the Spring Glen Church for being our fiscal sponsor for the time being, but we are accepting donations now. And if you have any questions, our development committee, Davida Foy Crabtree and Cindy Kayer would love to help you with that. And again, register for annual meeting. It's going to be a great opportunity to make some good trouble, and we hope to engage with many friends of Silver Lake at that event. So we will hold another Zoom before the annual meeting. And the other exciting thing about annual meeting is that you'll have the opportunity to see Reverend Ralph Warnock as well. So that is it's not just about getting friends together, but there's some real opportunities for some UCC joy in there as well. So unless there are any other ads from Andrew and Brian or other board members, I think we're going to open it up for Q&A. So
I would like to say two more things, Chelsea. I want to emphasize the point you just made that we anticipate holding another meeting of our community before annual meeting to give you our most up-to-date information about how we understand the proposals that will come forward and the actions that need to be taken. We know that the conference's process keeps shifting, and we have every reason to believe that's because they're starting to understand how many people are invested in this and they're hearing feedback. Your feedback and engagement in the process about preserving the future of Silver Lake is critical, not just within the wider Silver Lake community, but in direct engagement with conference staff, association leaders, other clergy, and local church leaders. And so the work you do to help just share with people that this is happening is really important. The other reality that we need to name, sometimes talking about money is uncomfortable, but we named to you that we came forward with a proposal that represents a fraction of what Silver Lake is truly worth. I do sometimes wonder if we had a few extra dollars in that proposal, would the conference be looking at our proposal differently? And so if you have the capacity to make a significant gift that might help us shift the math on our proposal, or if you know someone who does, and you're passionate about seeing us be able to offer in ways that will continue and sustain the ministry, or even support an ongoing operation once we have possession of the camp, please come talk to us. Your opportunity to give could be really transformational in this process.